So welcome folks to the YPPN. This is a great opportunity to hear from the fantastic team at Alpine Shire Youth Services. We've got Lara and Elvie who have been part of the Future Proof Collective, and they're going to be talking to us about their tips and tricks and learnings and journey of working with young people and connecting them with decision makers. So I'll pass over to you, Lara and Elvie. And folks, if you're in the call live, you can use the chat box to ask questions. As there's two of them, I'm imagining they might be able to kind of incorporate them into the presentation. But if not, we'll just have a bit of time for Q&A at the end. And if you're catching up online, enjoy. I'll pass over to you.
Hello. I guess we'll just jump straight in and sort of preface this that when we can recognize that we're just like you, we're just youth workers. Like, we're not here to tell you you need to do this when talking to councillors, but definitely here to just tell you our journey and our findings. I think we've had a little bit of a roller coaster with this topic in connecting young people with councillors and in how to navigate tricky conversations. So yeah, I guess we'll just sort of tell you what we've been doing.
Yeah, and it's you can take what you wish from it, and feel free to ask any questions, and we'll answer them to the best of our abilities. And you can always contact us afterwards if you have any further questions as well. Let's get right into it.
So I guess when Sam asked for us to talk at this meeting, we were kind of like, what are we going to talk about? But yeah, as I mentioned, we have had a roller coaster in connecting our youth advisory group, which are called the Resilient Alpine Youth Squad. We call them RAYS for short, RAYS. So as we refer to RAYS, you understand what that is. But yeah, so we connected RAYS with our councillors purely because before we came on board, there was a youth council that I guess has been, am I echoing?
A little bit of feedback.
Let me.
Yeah, sorry. I thought the sound was okay, but actually it isn't quite as good as I originally thought.
No, that's okay. We thought this might happen.
We're prepared.
We will go back to headphones.
Awesome. I'll let you plug those in and test them out.
Is that any better?
I think that is
how
better,
we're going.
Yeah, you go for it.
Fabulous. Please feel free to cut us off at any point. Yeah, so before us, so in 2019, the Alpine Shire Council had a youth council, which, like a lot of other local councils, is quite established. So a lot of youth councils will have their youth mayor and their secretary and things like that, and it's really formal. So we've basically discovered that in 2019, it kind of got to the point where teachers were picking what students were going to be in attendance at these sorts of things, and the interest just dropped. No one cared for it anymore. None of the young people wanted to be there. And it sort of just, I guess, to put it kindly, burnt to the ground. No one cared that their voice was important. The councillors just saw them as pointless, which I guess really put a really sad dampener on that youth council aspect. And then I guess with the notion of COVID as well coming around, it just disbanded. So when we got the Future Proof funding, so for those that aren't aware, the Future Proof funding is from the 2019-2020 bushfires that YPPN received, and basically found a whole bunch of partners in the northeast of Victoria, and we got given this funding to establish a youth advisory group, create study opportunities and qualifications and things like that to make young people more resilient in case of a natural disaster. So with that, because of the unfortunate funding that we received, we had to create a youth advisory group, and I was brought in quite early to create this group, and I essentially just found a whole bunch of really strong members from the schools, from all 4 of our schools within the Alpine Shire, and created a little bit of a mismatched group that none of them knew each other. It was a little bit random, a bunch of random kids that didn't really know what we were doing. But in turn, over the last 2 years, they've just become incredible members. The leadership amongst every single member in that group has just absolutely shown through, and we have an absolutely insanely awesome group of young people that have just shined.
They've really grown into the form of people that they want to advocate for young people within the Shire. They're not just there to host events or anything anymore. They want to advocate further and be bigger and better, and they want to grow the group, and they're really brilliant. Good kids.
Yeah, we and I guess because we've had to create an advisory group, the local councillors sort of saw that as, oh, this will be our new youth council. Youth council is great. Let's use these people as I guess the voice for youth. And there was just no structure to it. It was really quite chunky, honestly. No one, I think my position, it was always it was always kind of, oh, sorry, I can't remember what I was saying.
Well, councils were expecting it to be.
Oh, yeah.
They were expecting it to be a very formal, Rays would address councillors like the previous youth council, and that would just be the tick box. And Rays did not want to do that.
No.
So they started off giving that a go, and Lara was there from the beginning.
So. Yeah, so what we started off doing, basically during one of their briefing sessions, just on a Tuesday afternoon, we would get Rays to come in, and they would stand in front of the councillors like a school presentation, and the councillors would be sitting down on the chairs that community sit on during council meetings, and they just had the most disgusting behaviour. They would sit there with their arms crossed and just didn't really want to hear what the young people had to say. And I think at the start we kind of started just being like, this is the youth problems, we've got XYZ going on, whether you can help or not, this is how we're feeling in our area. And that's sort of how we started this conversation, and it really wasn't received very well. A lot of the members that had created this incredible group and leadership amongst each other were then pushed down and felt like they weren't heard, and it was quite devastating to watch, because I had put so much work into creating such a dynamic group to then be squished almost. But yeah, do you want to talk to Mary visiting?
Yeah, so as Mary, the new CEO of Graphic Future Proof, did her listening tour and came to Alpine and met with some of our members from Rays. They had a sit-down dinner, and it was wonderful. Obviously, she was there with the intention to hear their stories, hear their thoughts and their opinions and what they would like to see changed within the Shire. And, she was there to listen. So it was really wonderful, and it set an amazing standard for having a person in power sit down with people that wouldn't necessarily meet with that person on a general basis, and to make them feel really heard. So they came away from that meeting feeling so elated, and they were like, that's what we want. We want that in every setting. We want that with councillors. We want that, we would love that with every government
community
member, really. Yeah, with every member of community, every group. So okay, let's see what we can do in terms of meeting in the middle, or at least heading towards that. So we organised our next meeting with councillors, and we initially decided on a meeting space where councillors would meet generally in our chambers. But instead of like the last session with the young people addressing them and them sitting down, it would be in a communal dining space. So we had large tables, large amount, like a buffet style snacks arrangement, and an assortment of snacks too. And I think this was an important aspect, was we had fruits, we had foods that would kind of seem as more like juvenile to a degree, like cake pies and sausage rolls, to really enforce the casualness of the meeting.
Break formalities.
Yeah, and we also made sure to intersperse the young people amongst the councillors. So it was they were never divided. It wasn't one side or anything. They They were totally amongst each other. So at any one point, they could also turn to each other and discuss things if, small discussions wanted to break out. That didn't generally happen, but it was an opportunity, which was really great. The food also, I think, encouraged them to kind of just communicate a bit more as well in a more casual sense, because it was a self-serve, which also I think helped disrupt that kind of innate power dynamic of, younger people serving older people or people within a higher level of power. So everyone went in, they got their own plate, they served themselves. And it also helped with, anyone's anxiety whilst they were talking or listening, they could be picking at their food. And that was like totally okay, because it was a informal sitting, morning tea-esque meeting. What's another point we wanted to talk about? I think specifically having the young people, sitting amongst councillors was really good. We did notice that we had 2 councillors and our CEO sit together in one corner, and that instantly created a kind of head of table.
Yeah.
And that was something that our young people noted and wanted to change within the situation afterwards. So I think going forward, that is definitely something we will be trying to change. And if you'd like to talk more about the pros and cons from that one.
So after the meeting, it was quite sweet, actually. The second the councillors stepped out of the door, they all came together and they were like, okay, this is what I felt in that, and this is how I felt then. And it was really cool for them to kind of nut out how they were feeling. However, I had to be like, all right, guys, like we've got them next door. We've got to make sure we, stay professional. And so for the next meeting, for our next raise meeting, we actually caught up and we dedicated the whole meeting to unpacking how we felt during that. We made a pros and cons list. We made a list of what we could do next time that might make them feel comfortable and have a more productive conversation as well. So some of the pros was that they felt way more heard than the first time that we did meet with councillors. They felt that it was a little bit more personal, and as Elvie mentioned, as we alternated the seats, some of our young people actually had a really good one-on-one with a couple of councillors that they just wouldn't have had before. So that was really comforting for them to create those relationships. Not only did we alternate, but it was really nice that the numbers were even. So they mentioned that it was really cool that it wasn't overbearing of just all adults talking to 3 young people. It was 6 and 6, and that seemed to work really well. And they kept sort of reassuring me that was really awesome, that they weren't overrun. The other thing that I personally sort of asked how they felt about this, because this was something that I took away was really incredible, was when a young person mentioned a point and a councillor was, I don't want to say rude, but quite abrupt back. And the other members of Raise came and supported them. They weren't scared to support each other. And I think it's kind of that point of, I want tomato sauce, but I won't ask for it for myself, but I'll ask for my friend. It was kind of that example of young people just, I guess, cutting in, just being like, no, this is an issue that we're all facing. And it was really cool to see them supporting one another. Some of the cons that they noted was to start the conversation, one of the councillors brought up the idea of the blue sky dreaming point. And it's like, if you could do it, if you could have anything in the world in the Alpine Shire, what would it be? And so, young people are coming out with, we want more transport, we want more mental health support. They were 2 of the really big ones in our area. We want more education was another one. And it was almost as if the councillors were like, oh, well, that's not our problem. That's a state problem. That's a federal problem. That's this problem. That's not us. And admittedly, they're right. That's absolutely a really good point. However, that question of blue sky dreaming we were answering, and then they were kind of on that defensive foot. So I think if we were to go to it again, we'll rework that question and sort of make it more local based rather than sort of your dream views.
Yeah, a bit too open-ended. Like they had asked for large ideas, but then in doing so, we're kind of able to rebuff them with, you know, a generalized answer. So I think that's something going forward that we will also have a bit more structured questions for them, and, you know, some more, I guess, structured boundaries in terms of conversation as well. Like we don't want to necessarily discuss, you know, war and famine in the world. We want to discuss what's possible within our shire for our young people, and what we can do for them, and what is a possibility. Not what would you possibly like to change? Oh, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And yeah, Hannah, I guess that sort of does a little bit answer that. They we don't know the answer to this question just yet of a council actually going to make change on behalf of the word of young people. I think we kind of came to the end conversation was, okay, we're going to do more advocacy to state and federal to help these issues. Can you help us with that? And they were really keen to help us and to listen to us. However, regarding local issues, I guess it wasn't really touched on. So I think the way that we're going to reword those questions would be, okay, like this is what we need from you. This is actually a tangible outcome, and this is what we're expecting. Can you sort of come to the table on that and see what comes out of it? So PDC, we're working on it.
Definitely. I think also informing our young people of what councillors are capable of, because some of us, you know, we went in and we realized as the discussions were going, we're like, wow, they're answering these questions like, oh, that's a federal issue. And we're like, you know, we didn't realize at some points that you know, that they couldn't deal with these things, or that they couldn't act on these certain things. So I think, you know, knowing exactly what they're capable of and what we can ask of them is a really important aspect of the discussion.
Sorry, Bianca, I think we also just sort of spoke to that advocacy point as well from your question. Yeah. So I think that's sort of, yes, they were keen to help us in that advocacy point.
Yeah, they were always keen to, you know, they can write a letter of recommendation, or we can send them emails regarding, you know, what we would like for them to discuss further.
And that was a really big thing that councillors gave back to us. They were like, can we open these communication lines more? Because it's still very, you know, we need to talk to our manager that needs to talk to, you know, like it's just such a chunky system. And they're like, can we just cut that and just talk directly? And so that's kind of what we're really excited for moving forward, is creating that really cool communication with councillors directly to navigate these sorts of barriers.
And they specifically asked for, what is it, they want a briefing every
quarter.
Yes, they want to have a meeting, a similar meeting style. They really actually enjoyed that style of sit down lunch, like slightly more informal briefing, and they want to do it every quarter, which is awesome. So hopefully we can grow the advocacy group, and they can, you know, they can be stronger and feel more comfortable in doing that, and it can be a regular thing.
Yeah. Another con that Ray's identified was that common ground aspect. So as Elvie mentioned, we had actually met in the council chambers on a big long table, and Ray's almost felt like we were on their turf. And I guess that point of being really standoffish and knocking back all these things, I think they feel like potentially in our youth hub, which I'm going to refer to as the Lighthouse from here on out. That is what it is called. So yeah, they were really keen to meet in the Lighthouse. We have a really big long table there. It's where they're all very comfortable. It's where we have multiple of our meetings, but also, of course, just our youth hub twice a week anyway. They were really keen to move this meeting to our turf and feel more comfortable in their own personal space, rather than being in this big scary meeting room that is kind of dark
And cold.
So cold.
And yeah, they just, whatever will make them feel more confident really within the situation. I think also setting that expectation that unfortunately they aren't like Mary, they don't have the mindset that she does within that meeting that they had with her. You know, she was there to specifically listen to them, to hear their thoughts and opinions. Whilst councillors, they know the Alpine Shire, they've lived there, you know, potentially their whole lives. They also have that generational difference, and you know, when we are advocating for change, that can sometimes come across as, you know,
what's wrong with where we live already?
Yeah,
we already know this. We already know this.
Yeah, arguing with what they think is already fine. So I think we have to also navigate sometimes the conversation structure and how we go about advocating for that change, so that it doesn't come across as potentially not aggressive, but, you know, aggravating to them to some degree.
Yeah. Also, another thing which I think is unfortunately one that I think we'll really struggle to change, but we kind of started the meeting at, I think it was 2 o'clock or whatever it was, and councillors were coming in late. They were like 5-10 minutes late, and it's something that we've always drummed into our youth advisory group, is that like, it's one of our values, is just that oh my god, that's what I'm looking for, the arriving on time and just being punctual and things like that. So when someone in power did it, they were really judgmental of that. They were like, why are we putting all this professionalism lens over everything we do, and we're the young people and we're the ones that are more chill, and then these big dogs that think they're too good to sort of talk to us for coming in late, they really were on edge about that, and they felt it was a really big disruption to the conversation because we had to repeat a lot of the things that we said, and they just found that as a really big sign of disrespect. So I am really keen to, we've sort of had that conversation a little bit with the EA and all that sort of stuff, so we'll see what happens at the next meeting, I guess, on that one.
And speaking in terms of slight disrespect, and something that we're also going to be pre-facing the next meeting is meeting guidelines. Something we've experienced, which is awesome in some of our trainings with Line Wangarato, is that they have meeting guidelines, you know, just general, you know, respectful behaviours, and they're written up on a board, and it's like, you know, everyone is entitled to respect, please respect everyone's opinions or pronouns, or just, you know, common decency. Anyway, because we did have a meeting, a slight, I guess, error on that. We, at the introductions, going around the table, being like names, pronouns, you know, something silly that might be fun as an icebreaker. And for example, like Elvie, she, they, you know, I'd make the grass purple. And I took one of the councillors, and they introduced themselves, they did name, and then they said old white men for their pronouns. So, you know, it's just a little, like, those like small micro, like, not really even a microaggression, it's just like kind of an aggression in general, which is sort of unnecessary, and especially within this day and age, those things we would really like to avoid in the future. So
I really hope we plan to meet with councillors in September, which actually will look like exec, because we'll be in caretaker period. For those that don't know, caretaker period is that election period where we've got the candidates. We can't be like sending a lot of information to the current councillors. That would be unfair to other candidates that are running for council. So we'll see what that looks like. However, I hope we've mitigated a lot of those challenges in terms of respect, and I think it was just quite disappointing for Rays to see that these adults that are these esteemed people in power showing, I guess, that disrespect that they've been taught to never do. And it was really nice that they were able to voice their concerns with us, and hopefully we can mitigate that for next time.
Yeah, first aspirations and lots of positives, lots of negatives. We've learned a lot.
Yes.
What do you have learned from us?
Anyway, we did speak to you for quite a long time, but
we've
reached our time now. We could talk forever. We're good yappers.
Yeah.
So yeah, please feel free to ask questions or reach out to us about any of the challenges that you've experienced, and that might be similar to ours. We're always keen to learn.
Yeah, if you ever want to have a yap, we're always open to having a good yap.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much to you both for reflecting on that process and pulling out the kind of steps that you took, the different twists and turns, and yeah, sharing those pros and cons was super interesting. For me, the real valuable takeaway is just around when you change the environment of a conversation, it impacts the dynamics that are going on. I was really reflecting on like their territory and our territory and how that adjusts that power imbalance and the relationships. I just think it's fascinating. And with the elections coming up, I think you've got such a useful kind of case study to share. My mind's boggling about how else we can help you to kind of profile that. I'll have a chat with Harmony about what options can look like, because yeah, I just think it's super interesting. But I'm taking up time just waffling. Has anybody got any questions that they wanted to ask Lara and Elvie before we move on? There were some great comments in the chat, which you kind of fed into the presentation anyway. So has anybody got a question? Otherwise, we might move on. All right. Thank you very much to you both. I will end the recording there.